Hi, I'm Bob French. We've been getting a lot of questions about the response to COVID-19, and one part that seems particularly confusing to a lot of people is what the Federal Reserve is doing, and especially about quantitative easing. A lot of people basically want to know what quantitative easing is and why the Fed is doing it. Now, during normal times, monetary policy is one of those dry topics that most people just kind of nod along with and just kind of let it float on by. It can seem really opaque and just generally confusing. But in reality, it's pretty simple, or at least the top level stuff is. First off, what is quantitative easing? Essentially, quantitative easing just means that the Fed can go out and buy more and different types of assets on the open market than they normally would be able to. And crucially, they're effectively creating money to buy these new assets. Instead of running the printers to make new bills, they're just doing it with accounting entries. Now, normally, the Fed will work its magic by raising or lowering something called the federal funds rate. This is basically the rates that banks use to loan money to each other overnight. Essentially, lower interest rates encourage economic activity, but at the cost of increased inflation. So when the economy slows down, the Fed will want to lower interest rates. But when the economy is showing signs that inflation will start picking up, the Fed will start to think about raising interest rates. It tries to walk a fine line where the economy has the space to grow, but also avoids high inflation rates. The trick is that the Fed has already cut rates pretty much to the bone. And, well, there's still some work to do. So the Fed needs to look at unconventional tools, as they're called, like quantitative easing. The goal is to try and increase the money supply and drive down interest rates even further, and hopefully encourage economic activity. One of the other positive effects is that since the Fed is out there buying stuff up, they're increasing the level of liquidity in the markets, helping to ensure that the financial system will continue to operate effectively. You can think of quantitative easing as the Fed basically opening up the taps on the market, especially as Congress and the President are working through a fiscal response. One of the reasons that quantitative easing and monetary policy in general can be so powerful is that it can be done so quickly, because the Fed is an independent body that's not beholden to the President or Congress. It can act much more quickly than other portions of the government. On the other hand, fiscal policy, such as stimulus bills, can be a lot bigger, but they're just slower to get out the door. They need to be negotiated between literally hundreds of people who all get a say. There are only 7 people on the Fed's Board of Governors. Now, there are downsides to quantitative easing. Just like cutting interest rates, quantitative easing has the potential to increase the inflation rate, especially since the Fed is actively creating new money. And that is a real concern, which is why quantitative easing isn't used all that frequently. The Fed only brings it out when the economy really needs some help. And then they can turn off the taps when things are starting to look more stable. While it's tough to pin down exactly how effective quantitative easing is, both because the markets are really noisy in a crisis and we just don't use it all that much, the general consensus is that quantitative easing is helpful in both ensuring that markets stay orderly through increasing market liquidity and also giving the economy a boost through further lowering interest rates. If this was helpful, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can see what we're up to. If you have any questions on quantitative easing or anything else that you would like me to address, just drop them in the comments below. You can also check us out on the web at retirementresearcher.com and make sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter to keep up to date with everything that we're doing.